Well, hello, Stephanie. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Our listeners know you best from your New York Times best-selling book, Maid, and the hit Netflix series as well. You're out with a new book called Class, which is the sequel to Maid. I guess my first question is, how did you decide on the timeline for Class and why this book? Why now?
Well, the paperback will be out in September, so it's been out for a little while now. And the year or the time that I chose was very specifically my senior year of college. And I think, it was mostly because of an event that happened that year that was I was denied food stamps because I couldn't meet the work requirements as a full-time college student who was also working. I just wasn't working enough. And so that has always been something in my life that has very fundamentally changed me. Just to be told by the government basically that I don't deserve to eat because I'm not working enough. So that was the main reason. But I mean, there were also a lot of other things that changed my life that year. I got pregnant with my youngest daughter, who is now going to be 10 in a couple of weeks. And I had applied for the MFA program and was rejected. And so was kind of marooned after that because I didn't really know what I was going to do next. And it was also a time period in my life that I was very hungry, both physically and, hungry for a college degree, I guess.
Yeah, that's incredible too. Like, obviously, with Maid, I mean, it was such a story of perseverance and resilience. And then I read something recently where you're like, because I had no other choice. Like, we love to talk about resilience, we love to put that on a pedestal. But at that time, I was really just doing everything I could do to survive. Is Class another take on that? Is it another expose on the reality that, it's not just that a woman got through this woman is you, and eventually did graduate and had tremendous success after that? Is it also because you literally had no other choice but to do the best you could do for yourself and your child?
Yeah, I think, we assign the term resilience to poor people instead of doing a lot of work to fix the systemic structures that are keeping them poor. And it goes along with the kind of the myth that we follow in this country of, if you pull yourself up by the bootstraps and work hard enough, then you're going to make it. And that puts a lot of responsibility on people who um, don't have any resources and don't have any invisible support systems like family, you know, income or, support from their parents or generational wealth or anything like that. And to expect them to kind of um, be superheroes when they can't afford self-care or can't really afford to take a day off or a vacation or, a lot of the things that um, people with means do have access to. I mean, even, a bubble bath. Those were all things that I couldn't really afford to do. And yet I was a single parent. And so doing the job of two people plus we didn't have any money. And it wasn't because I wasn't working. It was just I wasn't getting paid very much.
I honestly, like, I'm sure you've been asked this before, but what was it? Did you have an inner voice, a mantra, something pushing you? Because I know there's so many people tuning into this right now who are like, I'm going through something so difficult. I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. What worked for you? Can you share something that could maybe uplift them in their current situation now that you're out of it?
Oh, I mean, my situation was, I mean, if I didn't do it, then we didn't eat, or we were already very housing insecure, but I mean, then we would be homeless. And so there really wasn't a lot of choice in the matter of um whether or not I wanted to do anything. You know, most of the time I didn't. Cleaning houses is not very fun. And so I mean, I just had to do it. I didn't really have much choice in it. But I mean, I was also extremely short-sighted. Like I didn't really think about the future. I didn't think about the next week. You know, it was just getting through the end of the day, most of the time. And I got really good at um, really absorbing myself in like 5-minute breaks. Like
Mm.
I would show up to pick my daughter up early sometimes just so I could have 5 or 10 minutes of silence in the car and decompress a little bit before I went to my, you know, third or fourth job of being a mom.
That's so crucial what you just said, because I think, going back to self-care being like a privilege for a lot of people with means versus, someone who doesn't have the means, like little pockets of time like that are everything. And so, even if you do have means and you still feel like you're haggard and running around, it's like taking the time to realize that you do have a little bit of control to just get back to yourself, who you really are, and to be centered. I mean, that's everything. And it doesn't take an hour and a half massage or anything like that. It could be 5 minutes before pickup.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You know, now of course I'm not struggling, and I'm kind of in awe sometimes of how much time I can waste,
Mm,
and how like an entire day will go by and I feel like I haven't done anything. And I mean, part of that is because, you know, my job is very much in my phone, like it's in my pocket. So like while I feel like I'm not really doing anything, like I'm still constantly working. But um it was a lot different when I really did feel like I did not have enough time in the day to get from one thing to the next and do all my homework and, you know, keep the house clean and all of that, and sleep usually was the one thing that I
mm.
uh didn't do very much. So
Do you sleep well now?
I actually do. I
Mm.
got really strict about like bedtime routine. Like I turn into an old lady at like 8 o'clock.
Hmm.
So sometimes if Coraline, my youngest, is like having trouble going to sleep, I'm just like, dude, I've got to go to bed.
Hmm.
Like it's
You're
my
on your
bedtime.
own.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm here, but like I gotta go.
You did a really amazing, I think it was on TikTok, and it was about you and your daughter walking up a mountain, and you told her it was going to be hard, but you were going to be able to do it. And then when you got to the top, she'd be able to see this expanse of her new home. And I kind of like liken that to, your journey together, getting through, you know, food stamps and working in class and all of those things. Do you feel like you've reached the summit now that class is been out there and you've had all this success, or do you feel like there's another summit or you have to keep pushing for the next thing?
Oh, I don't know when I will feel financially secure. I mean, I don't have a job that I can budget for. So, I mean, my job is primarily to stay interesting. And I have no idea how much money I'm going to make next year. You know, it's not really a lot of security in that sense. I mean, of course, I'm way more financially secure than I was 10 years ago, but at the same time, it's, you know, as far as my job is concerned, like I'm still very much in hustle mode of, you know, uh, planning and figuring out what the next book is going to be, and you know how I'm going to expand on what I'm doing so that I do have things that I do have a little bit more control over as far as I don't know, scheduling and budgeting for.
Yeah. Yeah. I read an article that you did about, being a writer and, it was your dream and it was everything you wanted. And then you're like, oh, the reality of it is there's so many things that you don't see that you don't know if you're not a writer. Do you still feel happy that you chose this career choice and that pretty much everyone knows your story now?
Uh, I mean, I chose to be a writer. I didn't so much choose to talk to people. So that was just kind of one thing that I unexpectedly fell into. So my main job right now is I'm a public speaker. Um, I have an event in Chicago this week, and but normally I do have a break in the summer, but I just passed my 100th speaking gig, and
Wow.
I have a really full schedule this fall, and that means, I'm traveling I think once a week to at least one place from the end of August to Thanksgiving.
Whoa.
So it's that part of it I'm grateful for. I mean, it's a it's a good job, but and I'm surprisingly very good at it. But it's very taxing on my mental and physical health, and I miss being at home, and so it's that part of it, like it's not necessarily what I set out to do, but the writing aspects, like there's really not much else I probably would have been able to do and have been completely content,
Mm,
with where I ended up. I mean, I was 9, 10 years old and planning to be a writer. So
mm,
that's kind of all I ever wanted to be.
I just got chills. I love that. When you are writing, I read that you wrote class in 31 days, which is insane. Well done. But what is your writing process like? How do you do that in a way that you're like, okay, I'm happy with the result. Like I know there's editing and all of that, but where you're crafting a sentence and you're like, I'm getting exactly what I was mulling over in my head out onto the page and it feels right. It feels good.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it would be great if I could like spell out how to do that. It wasn't 31 consecutive days, but
Oh,
like
okay.
I kept track. So I mean, there was like a week or something, where I wasn't writing at all, and then I would have a day that was like 4,000 words or something.
Mm,
So um, I am just a very I don't know. I'm a very thoughtful writer. I'm a very visual writer. Um, it's hard though because I kind of mentally live in that space for a long time. And with memoir in particular, I see it kind of as like getting into character,
mm,
because the trouble with that year, especially, was, I was pregnant and I was incredibly stressed out, and, your brain doesn't work very well when you're pregnant. And
mm,
so like there was just a lot of stuff that I feel like I was kind of fighting to remember.
mhm,
And with Maid, I didn't do any research. Like I didn't go back and like uh read anything. It was just all very specifically from memory, and wrote it straight through from beginning to end. Maid took just a few months to write too. And then with class, like I went through and I printed out all the things that I wrote that year in college. I procrastinated by doing that, and like having color coded filing for everything. And then I actually went through Facebook and, you
mm,
know, copy pasted and printed out like Facebook posts just to keep with the chronological timeline. And I used to post really funny things that my kid said, and so that was actually really useful. um,
Aw,
and and so there, like I'll spend a lot of time making playlists and like photo albums, um and really absorb myself in that time period. And then, by the time I actually am able to write, like I have the space and ability, then it comes out really fast. I've just always
Mm.
been a really fast writer. I had to be, because uh, I have, been a mom for almost 17 years old. And so it's, when I was freelancing, I would kind of take notes throughout the day on these different pieces that I was working on. And then at night, after the kids were asleep, I would make a huge cup of coffee and just write everything out really fast. Um, and I don't know why it comes out pretty good. I mean, there's an extensive amount of editing for an entire book. For class, I worked really closely with a ghost editor who was just amazing. And there would have been no way that we would have been able to meet the deadline. Like I agreed to the October 1st deadline in May of that year.
Oh,
Um, and I was only a couple weeks late. And then,
wow.
but we needed to have or I needed to have a final draft by January. And that part was insane. I mean, it's to edit a complete book and, get it all to the point where you're kind of proud of it and feel good
Yeah.
about it. That's really hard.
I almost look at it like there's this like rebellious part of you that's like, you know what? Bring it on. I've been through everything. Like I can handle this. Like bring on your scary deadline and I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna show out with work that people are gonna love and use in their lives for inspiration and just a great story.
Yeah, I don't know. I promised my best friend I would never do that again. It's really stressful. Uh, although I did hear this thing about procrastination, and it said that a lot of people will procrastinate and put things to the last minute because they're scared of people not liking it.
Mm,
Um, and if they're able to say, like, well, I did it all at the last minute, it was just like I didn't really
hmm.
do my best effort, then it's okay that people don't like it. And
Right.
there's probably a lot of truth to that. I was really the storyline in class was I don't know, it was a lot more intimidating than just purely writing a book about cleaning houses.
Yeah, I'd imagine. But when you look back now and you have this space and time and you're not necessarily in character, do you feel like you can separate from those versions of yourself that you were? Like you're now, you know, in this beautiful, beautiful home with your daughters and you've got a horse and these amazing dogs. And it's like, do you look back at her with compassion, or is it like I don't even really recognize that person anymore? Like it's just so far removed. Like, how do you think back of those versions of yourself now?
Um, I actually found like a higher power in Liz Gilbert's book, Eat, Pray, Love, like where she has
Mhm.
there's this like scene where she has an older, wiser self who's like standing behind her and telling her that things are going to be okay. I think she specifically says like go back to bed or something.
Mhm.
But I read that when, I was on the couch breastfeeding Amelia all day, um, and it made so much sense to me. And so when I was really, really struggling, I would imagine uh, my older, wiser self was always like 10 years into the future for some reason. And she was just, uh, I don't know, comforting in me in some way. And the year that Maid came out, I realized that it had been 10 years
Mhm.
and like I had become that person. And I think, there's a lot to be said about writing about the hardest times in your life when you're no longer um, financially struggling. And because you're kind of used to a different way of life and how people treat you when you're not on government assistance and Medicaid um and so I did feel a lot of compassion for myself because I didn't realize how abnormal a lot of the situations that I found myself in actually were
Mhm.
and how hard it was and how much of it was not necessarily my fault. And so that did kind of release me from a lot of guilt and shame. Um, but I mean, trauma is pretty real, and I'm still uh sorting through a lot of trauma and things that came about from being very housing and food insecure. It's not something that like you're suddenly skipping around in new shoes and singing songs. It's I discovered that what uh the success and financial privilege gave me was suddenly I had time to sort through a lot of the stuff that I had been through, and that isn't always easy or uh, make any sense a lot of the time. So that part of it has been a pretty long process that I'll probably be doing for the rest of my life.
I think that's beautiful, though. Do you think it's because you are a writer and you do observe the world so well, people, personalities, all of it, nature, that you are able to sort through all of this within a lifetime and that you actually have the desire to do so? Because so many people would shun it, be like, you know what, I'm good now. I don't even want to open that box. I'm fine.
I don't know. I that's probably just a different type of personality, maybe. For me, like if I am suddenly upset for no reason, seemingly no reason, and especially with learning what triggers are, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I'd been diagnosed with PTSD when I was 16, and I didn't really uh learn what that meant until I was in my early 30s. And so I really enjoy figuring out, what different things are and what they mean to me, and why I'm having this huge reaction to a thing like, my fridge being empty when, I could just go to the store and get food, but for some reason it's like I'm reacting to
Mm-hmm.
seeing that there's not a lot of food in my fridge, and why. And um I don't know. I mean, for me, it makes me a better, partner and mom. And um, I I would never want my kids to think that they have to bury their feelings. So
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think it's the bravest thing we can do as mothers, like notice the triggers, like realize, okay, this is a small thing, but it's pointing towards something that maybe I haven't been looking at, or maybe, I need to look at this moment now. I always think of it as like your inner child, like screaming out, like, okay, like let's deal with this now. And like, I don't know, if you do enough of the self work, you're at a point where you can actually like take their hand and deal with it. And in the process, like you with your cathartic writing, I mean, you're uplifting a generation of women and beyond. Anyone who reads these books is going to be affected in a positive way. What does that feel like in your body? I mean, do you wrap your head around it, or is it just like, okay, now on to the next speaking gig? Like, have you internalized the impact that you've made?
no, not really. I mean, I know that it's there, but I don't focus on it. I um, really what I set out to do was help change a lot of the stigmas that surround single moms who live in poverty. Just because there are so many assumptions, and um, they get blamed a lot for bad choices,
Mm.
and so that was a lot of my purpose in the beginning. Was just I wanted to show people that single moms are wonderful mothers who work really hard and love their kids just as much as anybody else. We just can't volunteer in the classroom, because we're working.
Mm.
And so the domestic violence part of it mostly came out of the series. I didn't write very exclusively about that in Maid. And so that was Molly Smith Etzler and her team of just really incredible writers that they had, and the actors, um and so that part has been really difficult for me. I experienced what is called secondary trauma, like from people like to tell me about their stories of,
Mm,
the abuse that they endured, and um, how they got out. And, a lot of the times it's about like how I helped them in some way, but I really can't hear that, because I can't, it's really hard for me to listen to really traumatic things. Like I don't even watch very traumatic things. So
same.
it's not something that I primarily take a lot of credit for. I think, it's, what Molly did in the series, and showing how emotional abuse is domestic violence. I mean, that it was so well done, and touched a lot of people because of that.
Yeah. I mean, I completely understand that. And I think too, you're a writer, you're very empathic, and it's probably why you love your horse and animals and things like that. Like it's just all of these signs point to a very like open-hearted, sensitive human being who's been through a lot, but has taken that pain and that suffering and made beautiful art out of it. So I just want to say thank you so much. We are almost to the end of time here. Stephanie, if there were one final message that you would want to leave with the listener about class, about your life, about anything, what would that be?
Oh goodness. I
No pressure.
One thing about my life that I want people to know. Well, I mean, the book that I'm working on, there was a line in class that said, I didn't have the privilege to feel. And so I've been really stuck on that phrase. Starting in, I guess, December or January this year, like that's the first time in 6 years or so that I haven't been under contract, or, contracted to promote something, or um, kind of had a lot of people overseeing my social media and, everything that I did out in the world. And so it gave me a lot of time to really think about, I don't know what the hell just happened, and to process the last 5 or 6 years of being a public figure, and the fact that, when I wrote Maid, I was kind of writing a life that I was still living. I mean, I wrote my way off of food stamps just, 6 or so months before I got the book deal for Maid. So, I mean, and I was still in low income housing. I was still, um, not with a lot of um knowledge of what resources that were accessible to me, just because they never had been.
Mm,
And so the last 5 or 6 months have been really good for me to uh, process a lot of that, and really think about what that means in a bigger picture of how inaccessible mental health care and um, self-care, I guess, the wellness industry, like,
mhm,
acupuncture, massage, like things that I have come to figure out really helped me immensely, that I desperately needed 10, 15 years ago. And there was absolutely no way that I could have afforded any of it. And so I don't know, and class came out and people uh on Goodreads started talking about, you know, my horrible life decisions. Like I very plainly saw uh the person that they were talking about was someone who desperately needed a day off and needed mental health care. I mean,
mm,
I had numerous mental health issues that I still have now. But now I'm able to get help for them, and buy vitamins and vegetables, and all of these things that, like, I didn't have any of that. And then I was expected to do so much more than I am now. So um I've been kind of really curious about that phrase, the privilege to feel and what that really means. Um, I'm sure I'm annoying to anybody that I see for, massage, or like a story. And I got facials before prom, and it was just kind of me like, do you ever have scholarships? Like, do you have a sliding scale? Like,
Yeah.
and so I've been kind of annoying in that aspect lately.
No, but like that's the squeaky wheel that we need, and if everyone tuning in is like, oh, I never thought about that. Oh, like it's just bringing in that awareness of the dearth and of opportunities for people who really would benefit from it. And you don't need to do it every day. It's like once a month, hey, you've got this service, I mean, it would make a world of difference for a lot of people. And again, I just think people aren't even thinking about it, right? Until you speak up about it. So from the bottom of my heart, I'm so grateful that you're here, that you've written these beautiful books, that they're out in the world in the way that they are. And yeah, just thank you for your time today.
Thank you. I'm glad this could work out.